One is a sci-fi action classic from the 1980s. The other is a sequel that feels a lot like the original. I mean, they may have moved it to LA, but a lot of it still feels like John Carpenter is copying off of his own homework. Escape from New York. They Remade It.
Welcome back to another episode of They Remade It. I'm your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
We're back with you for another season, another year. A year that is starting off pretty much the same as all the last several, it feels like. But, you know, that's neither here nor there.
It's up to us to break the cycle. We are the dream makers. And I feel that everything is what we choose to do with it. And I have not had a great start to the year, so I'm clearly failing at that. I'm not very good at crafting dreams, but...
Yeah, we are a very bad excuse for Morpheus.
Yes.
I
thought you said Morbius. I was going to go through the roof.
Nope, no, don't worry. I've seen my, Neil Gaiman, TV show inspired by the graphic novel. What that and other things.
That you have.
Yes, I know it was.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Yes, I know it was a graphic novel before the show. I don't care. Well, now that I've got my spite all going, pretty early on in this, I'll let you go ahead and run down what I'm sure is a fairly decent list of things you've been watching in the, obviously time off.
Yeah, I mean, better question is what did I not watch, basically, but, I only narrowed it, honestly, I narrowed it down to just new things, because, I saw a bunch of stuff, I rewatched some things, like Speed and Rush Hour and whatever, and I saw weird shit like Suburban Sasquatch for the first time and things like that, but it was sort of sporadic and all over the place, so I pretty much just picked the new in theaters things that I saw, and I'll sort of run down those. The first thing I have here is I did get a chance to see The Fabelmans before it left theaters. I know you had talked about that in the previous, I don't know if it was the previous episode or if it was the end of your show.
I think it was the previous episode, actually, because I had gone to visit family.
Yeah, but I got a chance to see that. It's a nice movie. It's really dramatic, and it's a nice insight into Spielberg's sort of frame of mind, and it's kind of like the key to a lot of his thought processes, I should say. Just like, various things that are depicted here might have, informed specific filmmaking decisions later on, even if it's not explicitly stated. And it's nice because he, even with West Side Story, which I know some people liked, he has had a rough go of it. I'd say just in this past decade, maybe. So it's nice to see that he is able to make a film like this still.
I'm not going to mention the one film.
That's probably for the best. But it was nice to see it. And I remembered because you had teased me when you discussed the movie that John Ford would show up played by someone that you weren't going to spoil, and I was like, oh, who could that be? I honestly, he had so much stuff going on, in the costume and makeup department, I did not recognize him until he spoke. The moment a word came out of his mouth, I was like, oh shit. So, yes.
I had to be told after the fact of the movie, because for the life of me, for whatever reason, I thought he at first was the actor that played the main protagonist in Jaws, and I thought that was just a cameo from another Spielberg movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for some reason my brain had just decided on that, but then I think my mom told me later after we'd seen that, I was like, oh, I can't believe he was in that. I was like, oh right, that was him. Sorry.
I was super happy to see him as a longtime fan of his work, and maybe we'll get to talk about him soon.
Yes, and obviously we are not going to spoil it to anybody listening.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. I mean, yeah, I'm glad that tickled you as much as I expected it would.
Yes. So Fabelmans was a good watch. It was pretty good. I liked it, and it's a nice It's not necessarily like the highest of the highs that Spielberg has ever achieved, obviously, but it's nice that he's able to sort of get to that zone again, given a lot of his recent output. So, made me happy.
I think it was
the movie didn't make me happy, but, the experience.
Yeah, it was a relative downer of a film.
Yes. I like Paul Dano, too. He's very good.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic fucking actor.
So, following that, I saw Megan, which is, the new horror robots movie.
Yeah, I saw, like, a couple trailers for that, and I was like, this... I don't know how to feel, but I feel weird watching this. I feel weird watching these trailers.
So, as a horror fan, like, the trailer was pretty... It was pretty intriguing, and it got a lot of stuff going for me, specifically, in that sort of horror field. Like, this looks like it could be interesting, and I'm glad that, it'll probably borrow heavily from, horror tropes, but, in and of itself is a new franchise, which we don't... Or it's attempting at a new franchise, which we don't get a lot in horror anymore, because it is so easy for horror movies to reboot themselves and remake themselves. I mean, we're getting Evil Dead Rises in, like, 2 months. So I was happy to see that. I went to the theaters and saw it. It is pretty rough. There's a lot of stuff going for it, but it does not go hard enough into the horror zone. And based on what I've heard from, I think I read from the writer of the screenplay, or maybe the script, that it was more horror centric. There were a lot more kills, and the kills were more, creative than what we ended up getting, but they toned a lot of it down, which took it from an R to a PG-13. That's what I read, at least, which is pretty disappointing. And the other thing, I think in total there's only like 4 kills in the movie, and one of them is not even a person. And none of them are all that interesting. Plus, they were all... You didn't see the actual kills happen in the trailer, but all of the setup to the kills were spoiled in the trailer. So... Another instance of the trailer not only took the good scenes, it took pretty much the entire movie and just gave it to you, which was upsetting as well. So, not great. I saw that it did well enough, and it was getting box office highs to the point where they did greenlight a sequel, which I think is operating currently under Megan 2.0, I think is the title. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about this one. We'll see where it goes. Hopefully, some of the critiques will sort of affect that, but I kind of doubt it because that's the way studios operate.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say it feels like a lot of audiences at this point are kind of clamoring for something else in general. And so I feel like as a result, we're getting a lot of very earnestly made movies that despite lacking in quality are at least like getting traction. But simply from the fact that they are not Marvel and they are not, Disney in general.
Which I do appreciate, and I actually that's going to be kind of the running theme of the last movie that I talk about. But I got one before that last one that I'm going to hop into. That is, I saw Puss in Boots: The Last Wish in theaters.
Oh, yeah. How'd that go?
It is not terrible.
Well, I've seen people kind of gushing about it on certain places online, and I was like, all right, cool.
I'd say I think it's the best of the Shrek franchise, including that first Puss in Boots, which is a spinoff, but that's not a high bar, even remotely. So it's not saying much. I think that the movie is well made, and I think the only real downer for me still with these types of movies is the writing, which ultimately you do have to step back at some point and say it's a kids movie. It's not just because it's animation; it's because this specific movie is designed to be for children. So a lot of the humor still does not land for me. I don't think it works. Aside from the John Mulaney character, who is by and large, I think, the best part of the movie. Everyone was gushing about the wolf with the sickles, which I think is a great, interesting character, but he is. I don't think he's the best part of that movie.
Who's the John Mulaney character?
John Mulaney voices ostensibly. He's not the big bad for Puss, but he's the big bad of the movie. He basically plays Jack Horner. Stick your thumb in the pie, whatever. But like the grown-up version of him, and he is obsessed with having all of the magic in the world and no one else having any. And he's just this big brick shithouse of a man that walks around just brutally killing people with no regard for anybody. But all the while, John Mulaney's voice is coming out of him, which I think is a great pairing because he's not on Ryan Reynolds levels by any means, but John Mulaney has been getting on my nerves recently.
But I think he's got he's Ryan Reynolds adjacent.
Yes, but I think putting him in a villain role actually really worked for me. I had no problems with his performance in this movie, and I think that is the best part. A lot of people have been praising the animation stylings because there are some sensibilities taken from Into the Spider-Verse, but I think a lot of that is, I think putting it all on like, oh, it's designed to, look like Into the Spider-Verse, and so that's why the animation is so appealing, is kind of reductive, because I don't really believe that. It does take sensibilities from that with like cutting frames and some of the more stylistic color choices, specifically in the fight scenes. But besides that, just in general, the character animation is more bouncy and squash and stretch, especially with that Jack character. And I think that works to the movie's benefit too. So I do think the animation is much better stylistically, and just design wise than a lot of previous DreamWorks entries have been. Kind of like The Bad Guys, which was early 2022, and I don't remember if I brought up seeing it on the podcast or not, but I was a big fan of The Bad Guys. The only thing that turned me off on that movie was, once again, the writing was not the best. But I think DreamWorks is moving in an interesting direction, art-wise, and I appreciate it.
It's pretty crazy seeing, like, actual advancement in the face of Disney, because, like...
Yes.
It's like, oh, my God, is it true? It's like, can we get new content now? What?
Yes, can we? Yes, let's
it's
start
a very
making
jaded
things
thing,
more.
I realized, but still.
No, I agree with it. I mean, that's how I felt about that Encanto movie. Like, I saw Turning Red, and I'm not the biggest fan of Turning Red, but at least they do try to do some interesting stuff with the art direction. The character designs are still pretty Disney Pixar. They're still in that wheelhouse, but a lot of the stuff around them is at least interesting. So hopefully they're also moving in the right direction. But yeah, I don't know. Right direction, as if there is a right and wrong, but I'll say a direction that I find more appealing and interesting than the same characters over and over again. But we'll see what they do. And that brings me to my last movie, so I can stop rambling. I saw Skinamarink. I finally saw Skinamarink.
Nice. I still forget what that is.
It is a very artistic indie horror movie from basically a YouTube creator that I do not remember the name of, that basically for the longest time he would take people's responses from the comments, like describing nightmares they had, and he would like make mini movies out of those nightmares. Oh, and cool. This movie is kind of like a 95 or 100 minute long assemblage of some of his favorite ideas of those. I think that's what I read, combining them all into one feature. And I think that's really interesting. Ultimately, this movie was not for me. I think I might have given it like a 2.5 on Letterboxd or something. I really respect it, and I really appreciate the fact that this movie was able to get at least a limited theatrical release, because it is so anti anything you would really be seeing in the movie theaters because of like the way it's shot and the way it's presented. Like, I don't even want to say too much of it for fear of like actually spoiling the experience, but it is not shot like a normal movie in any way, shape, or form. It's almost home movie-esque in a lot of ways. The main problem for me is that it's not really scary necessarily. It definitely gives me a creepy vibe, and I've been warming up to it the more I think on it, because it's been like 3 weeks since I've seen this movie now, and I still think about it every now and then, which is a good sign of, something that is artistic at the very least. Whether I liked it or not, I'm still thinking about it. But a lot of it is a really good creepy feeling, but there's nothing scary in the movie. There's 2 jump scares, which I don't really appreciate, and they kind of break the flow of the movie for me. But besides that, it's just, I don't know, there's not even a lot of tension. The closest it comes to being scary for me, and the thing that I think about the most is, again, won't spoil, but it's something near the end of the movie that happens to what I would call the primary character. But it's less scary and more of that kind of just thinking on it. It's not like vomit sick, but it like kind of makes you sick to your stomach a little bit just sort of thinking about it. Mm-hmm. But all of that is very vague talk to say that I'm not a big fan of this movie, but I respect it. I like the direction that it's taking, and especially the implications it has for theatrical releases in general, especially for horror. And I think that's a sign of good art, is that whether you like, it has things to like, it has things to dislike, but ultimately, it's something that you can sort of think back on and still remember. And I still remember pretty much all of this movie, even though generally barely anything happens, which is astonishing for something that's close to 2 hours.
Jesus Christ.
So So that is Skinamarink, something that I was not a fan of, but I would recommend to most anybody to see at least one time, and then, decide from there for yourself. But yeah, that's everything that I saw that I wanted to talk about anyways. But yeah, how about you?
I've been trying to rack my brain just of making sure I've thought of everything, because it's like I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff. Because for the most part, I haven't watched a ton of extra things. Had I talked about the Del Toro Pinocchio movie at the last episode?
No, you hadn't. Did you see that?
I had. Okay, yeah, I did see it. I liked it pretty well. Obviously stop motion animation. It's kind of like the a bit more old school feeling stop motion. Like obviously Leica has it down to like a fucking perfect art at this point. Um, and so there's a bit of like kind of a janky nature to it that I kind of loved.
Mm.
I don't know how to feel about the main character of Pinocchio. I think it's just for the fact of I've become so used to like the very Disneyified version of the character that in this one they just do some interesting things. Like without spoiling, at one point they basically just kind of apropos of nothing declare the fact that Pinocchio is an immortal being and incapable of death, and it's kind of weird. It's like kind of comes out of nowhere. I'm like, oh wow, all right, we're doing that kind of story. Um, And so, like that was just like different and just not expected. Otherwise, I liked it. I think I think it only benefited from the fact that like it's as now famously talked about that it takes place in up and coming fascist Italy, and it doesn't fuck around with that. Like people were being like, oh, maybe like a war is like I always think going into it at least that like maybe like the war and that sort of thing, the fascist buildup is just like a background thing. It's like no, they put fucking Mussolini on screen. He's a character at one point and interacting with Pinocchio. I'm like, whoa. Okay, cool. That's interesting. Um, so so I do like that, and I do like kind of like the ways the tropes that come along with Pinocchio's story kind of get worked at a little bit. Like the concept of like always listen to your elders as a rule isn't always good. In fact, for a lot of times as a kid, you shouldn't do that. And just like the deceptive nature of all that stuff, and it's like sometimes lying actually can be beneficial. It's like the pure truth isn't going to save you in every case. And so yeah, it's a very real story, and I think I like that most about it. It's also a musical, which I didn't expect.
Oh wow.
But it doesn't overstay its welcome with that. It's got Ewan McGregor as the cricket, which was interesting. If a little, his voice doesn't quite fit the character, but it's still good. But otherwise, yeah, it's a pretty damn decent movie. I give it a solid 7, maybe 7 or 8.
That's pretty good.
You can definitely tell he misses Pan's Labyrinth with some of the character designs. Like the Blue Fairy is like old. Like the Blue Fairy is like old school Fae kind of looking shit, which is rad, but also like unexpected. Of like, oh, okay.
Do you think he looks back on Pan's Labyrinth the same way we kind of did when we both first saw it last year? With like, I wish I had done more with the creature. I want to like get back to more of that. I wonder.
I like to imagine so. Yeah, I think he got a little bit of that itch scratch when he did Hellboy, at least.
True.
But yeah, that was Pinocchio. I'm racking my brain trying to think if there's been anything else in major. I don't think I've seen anything else in the theater, just because like I haven't really had that inclination. I will be seeing something in the theater here this next weekend, so I'll be able to talk about that next time.
Interesting. Okay.
But beyond that, we started to watch the deeply advertised Disney movie Strange World. And I will say because we only started it, we only got maybe within like 30 minutes in. And I will say from the 30 minutes I've seen, I fucking adore the world that they have, like the solar punk thing going on that they have, like this whole solar punk kind of society that they've got going on. I adore it to death. And I think the style is super cool. And it's like, it gave me like Atlantis Lost Empire vibes. And I'm like, cool, that makes sense of why they didn't advertise this. And the fact that one of the main characters is canonically gay, like
right.
it's fully full front and center. But the reason we had to stop watching it is because the main dad character is hauntingly similar looking to myself. And I could not keep watching because I kept seeing it and I kept becoming really uncomfortable. So like spoilers, I guess, to how I look to, whatever viewers are out there that give a shit. Watch The Strange World and the main dad character. That's shockingly like me. Yeah, like I'm like a bit bigger than that. But beyond that, it was like literally we took a screenshot of it. It was down to like the front teeth that the guy has, like one tooth being slightly off, like a little bit longer and a little off to one direction that my teeth do. Same eye color, same kind of nose, same kind of head shape, same hair and everything. I was deeply uncomfortable.
Wow. Well, there you go.
To the point
folks.
of, Yeah, it's scary. Like, if you turned that character into a real human, that's me. And I hated it also because for the fact that he's voiced by Jake Gyllenhaal, and I'm like, I'm not about that. Like, fine actor, I wouldn't want him to voice me. Um,
Who would you get to
so
voice
yeah,
you?
um, someone mute ideally.
Oh well,
I hate my voice. So you can imagine how hard the show is for me to do.
mm.
Um, but yeah, like we honestly just had to stop. I just couldn't do it. Um, Beyond that, as far as movies go, not a ton. I rewatched Jurassic Park only because I was doing a drinking game with a new friend.
Always good.
Um, Always good. Been doing a lot of, but that ends been cool. Is like I talked about, I think previously. Got a friend group going on here. We do a lot of trivia nights now, so we've been doing a lot of that. Beyond that, I've done a lot more with like playing games over the Christmas period. Um, I played through all of Psychonauts 2, just kind of apropos of nothing. I was like, cool, yeah, I played the original a long time ago. Um,
Nice.
I love the second one. I love the direction they went with it. I think I saw a lot of people kind of talk down on it a little bit because like the tone change, but it's like, yeah, it makes sense. In the original, they don't talk about the fact of, yeah, we're fucking around with people's brains. That's about as non-consensual as it gets. And so like I think I like what the direction they went with it. It ended kind of weak for me. I thought the final boss was just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess we're done. Um, Otherwise, still though, I loved it. Let's just see. We've recently, my girlfriend and I have actually started playing LA Noir because it was because it was on sale, and we were like, and I was like, you know what? I've seen enough memes about this shit. I'd love to see how a fucking, I think 2009 game with like supposedly amazing face tracking technology holds up, and it doesn't. Like even a
No, not
little,
at
it's
all.
bad. It is bad. It's clear they very much only tracked from like the neck up, and they tack these heads onto like the standard GTA style bodies. So it's like puppets with like real faces. Um, so it's clear like the heads are doing like weird jittery motions that like a normal human would be doing, like making a like physical reaction with their head, but it doesn't match with how their bodies move. Um, it's even worse whenever it's just like a random NPC who's just standing there with like really standard looking video game body, but then all of a sudden their face is doing like really in depth motions and everything. I'm like, what the fuck? it's we're loving it so far. Honestly, we like doing like the mysteries and everything. It's really annoying though. At one point, there's an arc of things where you end up tracking a serial killer, but along the way you keep thinking it's separate killings, and so you have to put away the most likely suspects at the time. But so it retroactive, but by the end, when it confirms, oh, actually all those people you put away were wrong because it was actually just this default answer by the end. I was like, oh, so all that work we did was nothing. Cool. Um, there's a lot of that in general. Just a lot of feelings of, oh, what was the point of all this? Um, but it's still decent. It's still funny more than anything. Um,
Yeah, I remember playing through
uh,
that. Not through it even. I think I got like 2/3 of the way through, and then we put it down for some reason. But with one of our friends in college, I was playing it with him for a while, and I don't know. Clearly, I never picked it back up again. I don't even know if I really liked it at the time I was playing it. I kept going because I thought it was funny. I'll play anything with like a friend around too. It doesn't matter how shitty it is. So
oh yeah, it's been pretty hilarious. And I'll try to wrap it up since we've been going for a second. But yeah, been playing that part most of the way through that. I think maybe halfway through. Um, and have also started playing on kind of in the vein of Double Fine from Psychonauts. I've been playing because it's available on Game Pass. Brutal Legend, the Jack Black game.
yo,
Um, and I've been oddly kind of taken with it. Like it's obviously like it has now infamously been kind of panned for the fact that it's like it posits itself as like this hack and slasher, but then it turns into like a weird RTS hybrid thing, and that can be a little rough, admittedly. But I think the style of it is so earnest, and it seems like they had so much fun making this that it's hard to dislike it because it's just like yeah, we're just running around as Jack Black's self-insert, just doing all this wacky shit with like a bunch of actual like rock and roll like legends voicing random characters. It's like huh, this is just kind of fun. And like every other location you go to just looks like a heavy metal album cover. It's like, you know what? Sure, fuck it, fine. Like this is the tone we're setting. I don't care.
it really does feel like at the time something that only Tim Schafer could get away with. But right before he burned away all of his goodwill with people.
Yeah. It very much is a game from its time. It's just janky enough that it's like you can't call it recent, but it holds up well enough that yeah, I think it's kind of only gotten better with age in a weird way. And plus, it's just funny having Jack Black as your main character. It's like I think the dude has a voice that could fit in anywhere, and I think it fits well here. I'm surprised he's not in more video games. which like he's in Psychonauts too, actually. So
Yeah, he's like a Double Fine Tim Schafer like buddy at this point. So he's been in a couple Double Fine games. I know he was in part 2 of Broken Age, I think. And yeah, like you said, he was in Psychonauts too. So
yeah, I mean that's been pretty fun. But then also alongside this, I have once again started playing Hollow Knight because I hate myself and love myself, and hate that game and love that game.
Hollow Knight's a great game.
It is one of the it's one of the few games, like truly long, hard games that I've truly wanted to play more than once, and I've already played it twice before. This is my third playthrough now, and I for some reason I just adore it, and I can't stop. I can't really put any major words against it. I think like all the extra challenges are like masochistically hard, but that's just me.
Yeah, I
will never do the Path of Pain. I do not care about 100% completion.
Yes, I'm aware.
I have tried like one Pantheon at God Home or whatever that's fucking called. I don't know. I can't do it, man. It's too much. I don't want to get carpal tunnel at 26.
That game that's one of those beat your head against a wall while you're listening to a podcast for 9 hours on a Saturday when you have nothing else going on type of games, you know?
So. It's weird how many games fall into that genre. As specific as it is.
You just got to get good at the game 3 times, and then you can blast your way through it, like I do with Super Meat Boy.
Yeah. I finally decided to look at the lore for it, because I was like, I got maybe 20% of this, and I'd like to just have it explained. And someone did it for me, and I was like, cool, I can go into this with a fresh head now.
So are you going to
play the game all over again.
So are you going to jump on Silksong when it comes out in 2030?
Yeah, maybe. If I'm still breathing.
If we're not irradiated blobs.
Yeah, God. Which, speaking of which...
Ooh, oh my God, you did it! You did it!
Hey, I did it! A good segue! Holy shit!
I love it. Yes, today we are talking about Escape from New York and Escape from L.A. Alright, first we're going to talk about the plot to 1981's Escape from New York, directed by John Carpenter. In a dystopian 1988, amidst total war against an alliance of China and the Soviet Union, the United States government has turned Manhattan into a giant maximum security prison to deal with a 400% increase in crime. A 50-foot wall surrounds the island, bridges have been mined, rivers are patrolled by helicopters, and all prisoners unlucky to be alive are sentenced to life terms in Manhattan. In 1997, while flying President John Harker, played by Donald Pleasance, to a peace summit in Hartford, Air Force One is hijacked by a guerrilla fighter of the National Liberation Front of America, named in reference to the Viet Cong, posing as the stewardess. Unable to regain control, Secret Service agents attach a tracking device to the president's arm and handcuff him to a briefcase of sensitive documents before putting him in the plane's escape pod. The aircraft crashes while the pod is ejected. Romero, played by Frank Doubleday, is the right-hand man of the Duke of New York, a powerful crime boss played by Isaac Hayes. Romero shows them a severed finger with the president's signet ring and warns that he will be killed if any further rescue attempts are made. Meanwhile, former Special Forces soldier Snake Plissken, played by Kurt Russell, is about to be sent into Manhattan after being convicted of robbing the Federal Reserve. Police Commissioner Bob Hawk, played by Lee Van Cleef, offers a deal to Snake. If he rescues the president in time for the summit, Hawk will arrange a full presidential pardon. To keep Snake from going rogue, Hawk has injected him with microexplosives that will sever his carotid arteries in 22 hours. If Snake is successful, Hawk will neutralize the explosives. Using a stealth glider to land atop the World Trade Center, Snake follows the president's tracker to a vaudeville theater only to find it on the wrist of a deluded vagrant. Convinced the president is dead, Snake radios Hawk but is told that he will be shot down if he returns without the president. Inspecting the escape pod, Snake is ambushed by dozens of starving crazies, in quotes, and accidentally drops and destroys his radio while trying to flee. He is rescued by Cabby, a jovial old man who drives an armored taxi, played by Ernest Borgnine. Cabby takes Snake to Harold Brain Hellman, an advisor to the Duke and a former associate of Snake's, played by Harry Dean Stanton. Brain, a brilliant engineer, has established a small gasoline refinery, refueling the city's remaining cars, and tells Snake that the Duke plans to lead a mass escape across the Queensboro Bridge by using the president as a human shield and following a landmine map that Brain has drawn up. Snake forces Brain and his girlfriend Maggie, played by Adrienne Barbeau, to lead him to the Duke's hideout at Grand Central Terminal. Snake finds the president but gets shot in the leg with a crossbow bolt and overpowered by the Duke's men. While Snake is forced to fight against Duke's champion Slag, played by Ox Baker, in a deathmatch, Brain and Maggie kill Romero and flee with the president. Snake kills Slag and finds Brain, Maggie, and the president at the top of the World Trade Center trying to escape in the glider. The inmates drop it off the roof, so the group returns to street level and encounters Cabby, who offers to take them across the bridge. Cabby then reveals that he bartered with Romero for the contents of the briefcase, a cassette tape which contains information about nuclear fusion intended to be an international peace offering. The president demands the tape, but Snake claims it. The Duke pursues onto the bridge in his customized Cadillac, setting off mines as he tries to catch up. Brain guides Snake, but they hit a mine and Cabby is killed. As they continue on foot, Brain accidentally stumbles into another mine. A distraught Maggie sacrifices herself to slow down the Duke. Snake and the president reach the containment wall and guards hoist the president up. The Duke then opens fire with Snake's Mac-10, killing the guards before Snake subdues him. He attempts to shoot Snake as he is being lifted up by the rope, but the president takes up a dead guard's rifle, violently guns down the Duke, and hoists Snake to safety. Hawk's doctor saves Snake's life with just seconds to spare. As the president prepares for a televised speech to the leaders at the summit meeting, he thanks Snake and tells him that he can have anything he wants. Snake then asks how he feels about the people who died saving his life. The president offers only half-hearted regret and lip service for their sacrifice, and Snake walks away in disgust. An impressed Hawk offers him a job as his deputy, but Snake just keeps walking. The president's live speech commences and he plays the cassette tape. To his embarrassment, it only plays Cabby's favorite song, Bandstand Boogie. As Snake walks away a free man, he tears the magnetic strip out of the real cassette tape. Now, on to 1996's Escape from L.A., also directed by John Carpenter. In 2000, a massive earthquake strikes the city of Los Angeles, cutting it off from the mainland as the San Fernando Valley floods. Declaring that God is punishing Los Angeles for its sins, a theocratic presidential candidate wins election to a lifetime term of office. He orders the United States Capitol relocated from Washington, D.C. to his hometown of Lynchburg, Virginia, and enacts a series of strict morality laws. Violators are given a choice between loss of U.S. citizenship and permanent deportation to the new Los Angeles island, or repentance and death by electrocution. Escape from the island is made impossible due to a containment wall erected along the mainline shore and a heavy federal police presence monitoring the area. I should also say, I forgot to include, the president here is played by Cliff Robertson. By 2013, the US has developed a superweapon known as the Sword of Damocles, a satellite system capable of targeting electronic devices anywhere in the world and rendering them useless. The president intends to use it to dominate the world by destroying hostile nations' ability to function. His daughter Utopia, A.J. Langer, steals the remote control for the system and escapes to Los Angeles Island to deliver it to Cuervo Jones, a Peruvian Shining Path revolutionary played by Georges Coraface? I'll be honest, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He is French, I believe.
Jumping here.
Cuervo has marshaled an invasion force of third world nations and is planning to attack and reclaim the US. Facing deportation for a series of crimes, Snake Plissken, once again Kurt Russell, is offered a chance to earn a pardon by traveling to the island and recovering the remote, a task that a previous rescue team failed to accomplish. To force his compliance, the president has one of his officers infect Snake with a virus that will kill him within 10 hours and promises that he will receive the cure upon completing the mission. The president is not concerned with Utopia's safety, however, regarding her as a traitor. Snake is issued equipment and sent to Los Angeles in a one-man submarine. As he explores the island, he meets Map to the Stars Eddie, played by Steve Buscemi, a swindler who sells interactive tours and one of Cuervo's associates. Along the way, Snake is helped by Pipeline, a surfing enthusiast, Taslima, I forget, a woman deported for her Muslim faith, and Hershey Las Palmas, formerly Carjack Malone, a trans woman and past criminal associate of Snake's. These characters are played by Peter Fonda, Valeria Galino, and Pam Grier, respectively. Eddie captures Snake and turns him over to Cuervo, who uses the Sword of Damocles to shut down Lynchburg in retaliation for Snake's presence. Cuervo threatens to inflict the same fate on the rest of the US unless his demands are met. Snake escapes and teams up with Hershey and her soldiers. They take gliders to the Anaheim staging area and fight Cuervo at the Invasion staging area, the Happy Kingdom in Anaheim, taking the remote from him. Eddie alters the remote for his tours to match the real one. Snake, Eddie, Utopia, Hershey, and a group of Hershey's soldiers escape the island in a helicopter. Eddie shoots Cuervo, who fires a rocket launcher at them before dying. Eddie jumps out of the helicopter, Snake and Utopia stay on, and radio that they are coming in after the rocket hits the helicopter. That's a lot that just happened. At the crash site, the president and his officers find that both Snake and Utopia are carrying remotes, and take the one held by Utopia, slipped into her pocket without her noticing, thinking that Snake has switched them. As Utopia is taken to the electric chair, Snake learns that the virus infecting him only causes a severe case of influenza that subsides within hours. The president tries to use Utopia's remote to neutralize an invasion force threatening Florida, but it only plays a recorded introduction to one of Eddie's tours. Furious, the president orders his officers to kill Snake on the spot, but he proves to be only a hologram projected from a miniature camera that had been issued to him. Disgusted at the world's never-ending class warfare, he programs the real remote and triggers every satellite in the Sword of Damocles system, deactivating all technology on Earth. Utopia is saved when the power fails, just before she can be electrocuted. Snake tosses the now useless camera aside and lights a cigarette, then blows out the match and mutters, "Welcome to the human race." And that's it. That's it. And you know what? I just realized they kind of brush past in this description that I am reading. I did not write this, ladies and gentlemen. They kind of brush past a lot of the middle of Escape from LA. I was like, oh, I mean, because it ultimately doesn't go anywhere, but it's like, oh, there's like an entire plot of people that keep getting plastic surgery to keep themselves alive, and they're led by a Surgeon General played by Bruce Campbell. We didn't touch on that at all. But yeah, it doesn't
that was
really
Bruce
go
Campbell.
anywhere. So
Yeah, well, we'll get into that, I'm sure.
But we will hop into the first full circle of 2023. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Now, my first New Year's resolution, as discussed on a previous podcast, is to make these shorter because, personally, I find it interesting, all of the different ties and the tangled webs that we weave. But I do recognize it gets a little tiresome to say, Buddy Bartholomew was an extra in X, Y, and Z. So, in my notes, I have every single full circle connection that we have with these two movies, but I have highlighted the ones of note, and we'll go through those. First of all, Adrienne Barbeau was Maggie in Escape from New York. She was the voice of the Central Computer in 1995's Judge Dredd. Donald Pleasance himself was the President of the United States in Escape from New York, and of course was Dr. Sam Loomis in Halloween, another John Carpenter joint.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't have a beard in this.
Yes, and he's not wandering around calling 10-year-old children evil.
Yeah, also that. He would, though.
Oh, he would, given a chance. Harry Dean Stanton played Harold Brain Hellman in Escape from New York, and he was one of the FBI men present in The Godfather Part 2. John Carpenter, the director, he was one of the Secret Service agents, he was the helicopter pilot, and he was the violin player in Escape from New York, and he was the voice of Paul in 78's Halloween. So, you know, very Alfred Hitchcockian, putting himself in his own movies there.
Of course.
Breckin Meyer was a surfer in Escape from LA, and he played Nick Schaefer in 2001's Rat Race.
Cool.
Bruce Campbell, who we just talked about, he was the Surgeon General in Escape from LA, and he was the ring announcer in 2002's Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi.
Really, he was in that.
I don't know that I knew that. I knew he had Spider-Man ties. I mean, one, because Sam Raimi, obviously, and he's buds with Sam Raimi, but also because I think he was the narrator of the Spider-Man PS2 game.
Yes.
But I did not know he was the ring announcer in that first movie. I don't know that I knew that.
Yeah, he appears on screen, at least for a little bit.
Okay, that is my bad then for not committing that film to memory. I kid.
He's technically canonically the guy in the movie who comes up with the name Spider-Man.
I am a fake Marvel fan, I'll admit.
I've seen that movie so many goddamn times. It's okay.
Moving right along, Jamie Lee Curtis, uncredited but fairly recognizable. She was the female narrator in both Escape from New York and Escape from LA. And of course, she was Laurie Strode in 78's Halloween. Of course, friend of Carpenter. She reprised that in Halloween 2018, which we covered. And she was Tess Coleman in 2003's Freaky Friday. And finally, for what we're covering here, the purposes of what we're covering here, Peter Fonda was Pipeline in Escape from LA, and Byron McElroy in 310 to Yuma, and, 2007's 310 to Yuma, and Wyatt in 69's Easy Rider.
Oh, yeah, that was it, if you can remember.
Also, I just read this. I cannot let this go. I don't know why I didn't highlight this. Cliff Robertson was the president in 96's Escape from LA. He was Uncle Ben in 2002's Spider-Man.
He was.
Did not know that. I just don't know that movie. I don't know Spider-Man. All these actors.
Yeah, I realized that. Yeah, I was like, holy shit. No wonder I recognize him.
It's like, I can't believe that just passed me by in the first time around. But yes, that is full circle.
This is completely parallel to the point of what we're doing, but I just need to say it because I keep forgetting it every time. Every time I am told the name Escape from New York as a film, for whatever reason, my brain has somehow associated it with a different genre of movie. For some reason, I think maybe buddy comedy, trying to get out of town sort of thing. For some reason, I keep thinking of the scenes from Some Like It Hot. Maybe I don't.
Yeah.
I fully my brain fully associates the name Escape from New York with something that is not this. That is not 80s dystopic pick, whatever. And it was It's surprising every time when I learn it's not the buddy film that I think it is. So I went into this thing okay, is this going to be kind of like bit more of a dry affair or anything. But then when I got to see Bruce Campbell wearing a fucking eye patch doing what I would assume is the original version of the Hideo Kojima character. Um, but I don't know that for sure. I mean, there's definitely someone definitely read someone else's notes. Um, but yeah, like that was a nice refreshing moment. Because it was like, oh, cool, yeah, this is just like action packed and pretty interesting. Um, Beyond that, though, I didn't know what the fuck to expect in this kind of going into it. Um, it is about as cheesy as it gets in both cases, each for their own reasons, and it's purely for the fact of the decades that they take place in.
Yes.
Um, it's always so funny seeing these big action flicks or like these kind of. It's hard to call like Escape from New York a big action flick because like it's John Carpenter, obviously. Like ultimately, he's not just gonna do like this like cliche ridden thing. He's also gonna have it be like actually kind of like insightful and have some other shit going on with it. But he still does do a big cliched thing at the same time. Um, and I guess for him, he probably set a lot of the benchmarks, at least with this movie.
True.
And
That's
so
always the thing
it's
you got to keep in mind when going back is like, okay, can I find an earlier version of this specific trope, or is this
exactly
the progenitor?
And I will kind of get into that because it's like it very much feels like Escape from LA is kind of like parodying itself in a lot of ways, which I actually ended up enjoying fairly well in a lot of ways. But to the point I was trying to get to originally is that it's always funny seeing like these big action flicks or these big like kind of decade defining movies, and they're trying to like push whatever technology they have at the time. And I know I've talked this to death, especially with the 90s, but goddamn, one does the Escape from New York one love its vector graphics and it's like 3D renditions of the skyline, and goddamn does Escape from LA love its like keying into the scene CG moments of like him underwater and them like doing CG stuff of him like flying like well, not flying but like swimming submarining around
Yes.
these like ruins and things, and then like him being keyed onto a fucking tidal wave surfing shot, which that's a thing that happens to this that kind of gets brushed over. That at one point his life is saved by Peter Fonda giving him a surfboard and saying, "We're about to ride a tsunami down this fucking like spillway through what was once Los Angeles," and he says "bitchin" I think about 17 times throughout the scene. And it culminates with him with the snake character being on this surfboard surfing parallel to a road that has Steve Buscemi driving around looking for him, and he jumps from the tsunami onto Steve Buscemi's open top car and wrestles it away from him. And I don't know why I couldn't help but just be somewhat like stupidly delighted by it, because I feel like in any other context I would have been fuming and I would have had to just stop watching for a few minutes.
Honestly, that's I was laughing too, just because the way that scene was framed reminded me a lot of the Adam West Batman versus the Cesar Romero Joker surfing contest from Batman '66.
Yeah, I've the same fucking thought of like this is just I'm watching Adam West just beat up Cesar Romero. Oh my god, that is the tone difference between these movies is so odd because they are ultimately still the same tone in the end of it being like, hey, the world has gotten weirdly fucked up and we're doing like weirdly inhumane things, but they do it in such different ways in a lot of cases that it's hard to look over because Escape from New York puts forward a very subdued and dark representation of everything. Obviously, the whole concept of Manhattan Island cordoned off like Arkham City, which I realize what Arkham City got the idea from now. But the fact like having all this going on, it's kept very quiet in a lot of cases, especially early on in the film. Like he's being brought into this prison, he's being processed, and we just get nonchalantly displayed, like said over the intercom, we have 2 hours before you're being transported to the prison. If you would like to elect to receive the death penalty, you may report to your supervisor. And it's like that's given no fanfare. It's given no further like commentary or anything. It's just like, oh, this is just the state of the world right now, where this island is considered slightly different, is like considered parallel to the death penalty, and people are allowed to elect that. And that's just dark. It's interesting, and it kind of like sets up, okay, this world isn't going to fuck around with us. Meanwhile, in Escape from LA, we have the exact same scenario of him being processed into this like processing unit, and they have the thing of, oh, if you would like to elect the death penalty, you may select so now. But it's done with all this fucking. It feels like walking through the Pirates of the Caribbean, of like we're seeing all these people in like a very like various levels of despair of being deported to this island, and we get the thing of, if you would like to elect the electric chair, you may do so. And there, on the left, as they're walking by, are the electric chairs on full display, with two men being violently electrocuted to death for all to watch. It's like, okay, it's still dark and it's still adding its own tone, but my god, that's kind of just silly by comparison.
Yeah, it's a really strange tone that they managed to construct, because even though a lot of the, like, I mean, both movies are sort of crazy in regards to what happens, and that can be applied to a lot of dystopic future sci-fi movies. But, like, LA takes it to, like, the nth degree in a lot of ways. A lot of it is heightened to an absurd level, but the dialogue still, a lot of it feels like you could just take it and fit it into Escape from New York somewhere, which it feels like I would be shitting my pants if half of this was happening to me. If things were blowing up and, like, I don't know, And the set pieces that they go through, like, I sort of mentioned the plastic surgery thing at the end of the plot synopsis, led by Bruce Campbell, Surgeon General, which is a really bizarre scene where he's like, oh, these two are alive. Let me remove his good eye. It's like, are you? I mean, I know you're Bruce Campbell, but you're like a cartoon in everything you're in.
And the whole thing of it feels so weirdly cartoony, but it is underscored by the fact that they're in this surgical, like, suite room where we see people's, like, bodies partially dismembered, and, like, these people with, like, failing Botox injections looking like, out of a fucking Cronenberg film. And then, at one point, the fucking Bruce Campbell character just goes up to, at the time, the female interest, who I'll talk about it a little bit later, I'm sure. But goes up to the female interest who is also being held there, and full on just gropes her, like, nonchalantly, and, like, it's kind of meant to be a whole thing. And it's just, like, it's with the absurdity of the situation, it's a step of uncomfortable too far for me. I'm just like, why are we here? Like, can we move the fuck on? And it was at that
Bruce,
scene,
buddy, back off.
Exactly, yeah. And it was at that scene, in that moment, that made me realize, oh, this is a video game. This is just a video game concept that someone decided to turn into a movie. Because that's what all this is. The random come and go side characters, the really start and stop set pieces of, like, going to these one areas. Oh, we're at the parade and we're jumping onto a motorbike and trying to get onto these guys. This really out of nowhere Texas, like Texas draw pistol scene that he sets up that these guards are way too cool with doing. It's like, y'all have machine guns to shoot him.
Yeah, there's like this whole scene where Cuervos, like, traps Kurt Russell, Snake Plissken, and he's like, all right, you gotta run back and forth across this basketball court and shoot baskets, and if you miss one, I'll shoot you. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. In the middle of this movie.
Like, that's a mini game, which to like Kurt Russell's credit, it's the famous scene where he, like, got all the shots, including a full court underhand shot to, like, land a basket. It's like, okay, credit where it's due. Impressive.
Oh, is that cool. Like IMDb trivia? Like, he actually did that? I didn't know that.
Yeah, like between takes, he would be practicing basketball specifically to be able to do those shots.
Very good.
Yeah, so it's like all those shots he does, it's actually him doing it. So, like, that all, genuinely impressive and everything. And that's the weird thing about this movie, and I promise I'll talk more about New York here in a second, is that for all the weird bullshit and all over the place tone, it doesn't seem like anyone's trying to half-ass it. Like, maybe the production level in certain cases, like, yeah, it looks like the CG's hokey, and I can't imagine it even aged well at the time. But it seems like everyone there is doing their damnedest for what they want to be doing. And so that's what makes it just so odd and such a varying level of, like, appreciation for me. And that'll culminate with comparing the endings, which, again, I will get to. I don't want to... That's going to be, like, the crux of my entire thing, ultimately, is, like, the differences in these endings. And it's just weird watching it. And also just, like, with a lot of moments of, yeah, this is silly and absurd. But it also has moments like, yeah, that one woman we mentioned that is also there in the, Botox clinic or whatever the fuck, Teslima, is nonchalantly shot and killed randomly by kids holding guns after having talked about the fact that this is the most freedom she's had in most of her life of being in this lawless place because, the US as it is has turned into this, like, ultra-religious fundamentalist hellscape. And, she, being Muslim, was sent here simply for that fact. It's like, it's a really rough scene. It's like, holy shit.
It's dark, and it's trying to do, like, a social commentary bit, but it underscores it for laughs. And I know that scene was supposed to be, like, a dark laugh, because the line she literally says right before getting shot is, like, it's not such a bad place once you get used to it. Shot. Dead.
Yeah.
You can't
like, not even
laugh. Like,
yeah. And it's so weird seeing this movie parodying itself because the original New Escape from New York is played pretty well straight. Like there's a few moments of like levity, especially whenever Cabby's on screen. But for the most part, it's a pretty played straight movie of yeah, they're in this hellscape and they're trying to get the hell out of Dodge. And it does a lot of things that you expect it to do. You expect it to fall into certain tropes like, oh, the Kurt Russell character is gonna fall in love with with this Maggie character who's alongside, his old buddy Brain. And like they're gonna split up and everything, like, or whatever this stuff is. But no, she sticks with Brain to the end, even giving her life in recompense for him being killed. And it's really kind of strong and like unexpected of yeah, this is a character who on screen at all times is wearing a fucking negligee and her tits are out more than anything else. But she's straight up still a character and still doing her own shit, and she's not just there specifically for eye candy. In the end, Kurt Russell just gets out with only the president. It's like, oh, that's unexpected. This is genuine. This is like a genuine interaction. I didn't expect that.
I did not expect so many characters to die in Escape from New York necessarily, but once they did, it's like, oh, that sort of sets the tone for it. Then I go into Escape from LA, and I'm like, I did not expect so many characters to live.
Okay, real talk. What the fuck happened to Hershey and those other characters? Did they live or not?
I think the implication is that they live. Is just a lot of them maybe necessarily didn't make it out. Like Steve Buscemi, for example, is like, Snake, get back here, you asshole! Because you were supposed to.
But that's the thing, Hershey got on the helicopter with them, but we never see her again.
That's true, but didn't they? Well, no, that is true. I don't know.
I think at one point the back of the helicopter bursts into flames, so I can only imagine they just burned alive. And so, like, beyond that, they never bring her up, and, like, whatever few of Cuervo's men got into the helicopter as well, like, it only, from a certain point on, it's just Snake and Utopia, right. And that's it.
Because that's all the characters that the movie necessarily cares about at that point.
And I'm even reading in the synopsis, it even says specifically that they get into the helicopter, and then after that, it only brings up Snake and Utopia again.
I'm assuming
it does
Hershey
not
survived.
What happens to them. No, there's nothing about it. It just says, Snake, Eddie, Utopia, Hershey, and a group of Hershey's soldiers escape the island in a helicopter. Eddie shoots Cuervo, who fires a rocket launcher at them before dying. Eddie jumps out of the helicopter. Snake and Utopia stay on and radios that they're coming in after the rocket hits the helicopter. It does not make mention of Hershey ever again.
I'm assuming that she survived because we did not see her death.
Yeah. But also for the fact of, that was a whole character. Like, we'd expect something.
And that was the Harry Dean Stanton of the movie. It was the character that Snake had, like, a background with, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna help you, I guess, even though we have like this history.
The character with like some implied true depth to it, because like in the vein of the Taslima being Muslim, in all likelihood probably got like she probably got kicked in here before like as a result of like whatever crime she committed, but like also the fact that she's able to come out as trans in this prison area is the sign of this is a more freeing place for this person. It's like there's depth to this character. Like, what the fuck?
And I mean, it's not even necessarily treated as a joke or anything. I mean, except for fucking Snake Plissken, who's like, I knew you'd be keeping this gun between your legs, and keeps calling her Carjack Malone, which is her old name. It's like, okay, well, you're a prick. But I'll like sort of get to that in a bit.
Yeah, like it establishes like the thing that he's doing is chauvinistic and not great. But there's never a point where any other character refers to them by the correct pronouns or by the correct name. It's just him. Just because he's probably pissed off about the situation. It's like, okay, yeah, he's a dick, but he has reason to be a dick at the very least.
Right. Which, to that end, I want to bring up, and hopefully this will tie us back to Escape from New York a little bit, since we've been going pretty heavy on LA.
Because, I mean, holy shit.
While I was watching the movie, like, obviously LA is almost like a joke or a parody of the original movie, but even when watching Escape from New York, I was like, I don't really like this, Kurt Russell in this. And then as it progressed and as I started to get into the start of Escape from LA, it's like, oh, Kurt Russell's doing fine. I hate this character. I do not like Snake Plissken as a protagonist at all. Like, he's obnoxious, he's overly edgy, and in LA, you can sort of treat that as, oh, it's the joke because it seems like a parody, but Escape from New York, it feels pretty earnest, so I don't think that's necessarily supposed to be a take on anything. Especially that early in the 80s before we got a lot of the stereotypical action heroes of that decade,
Oh, yeah. And I think almost as a result, it still creates a better character than a lot of action flicks in some cases, or even like other kind of tangential movies. Just in the sense of, this isn't a great guy, and they never establish him to be one. And they kind of show a genuine arc in the guy, especially in Escape from New York, of, he goes in here, he's trying to save his own skin, and then he just sees all the bullshit political shit that happens and sees how dismissive everyone is of, oh, good, halfway decent people died in order to get, this one fucking guy out of here whose relevance will straight up become non-existent as a result because of this one summit. And if they don't report to it, then they don't give a shit. He's realizing the arbitrarity of it all. And he's like, fuck it. Yeah, I'll take this stupid tape. I don't like these guys.
Oh, definitely.
Like,
and you don't have to have like necessarily a likable protagonist either. And I don't mind that he's not like a hero or doesn't have like a redemption arc or anything, because especially in this environment, like this awful dystopian prison system with like a horrible president and awful prison systems, like I think he's a fine character in that regard. I really think it was just the edgy try hard nature of the character, like putting his feet up on the desk like, I don't get a new president, I don't have to blah blah blah. I was like, I don't think that was doing anything for me.
Yeah. Which I should also say, for the sake of, some level of context, is that apparently Carpenter wrote this story in response to the Watergate scandal.
I believe that.
So that's, let that, color the interpretation of the whole thing, which, yeah, I see it. It wears itself on its sleeve. And to that end, where it comes into the endings, I gotta start bringing it up because, it's hard for me not to think of it, because it's kind of been at the forefront of my mind from having watched Escape from LA. Is that after watching Escape from New York, I liked the ending quite a lot. I thought it was like, yeah, this is what it set it up for. This is kind of that like devil may care kind of bullshit by the end of, yeah, this is a horrible system and this dude is doing what small party can to tell it off. And I was expecting to completely rib on LA for so much of the bullshit that was going on in it and how ridiculous it all is. Despite its earnestness, I was just like, this is a choppy mess. And we're just watching people getting killed left and right in all these different situations. It has Steve Buscemi doing his best Rob Schneider impression, which frankly is an affront to God. But, that's neither here nor there. So at a certain point, I was getting frustrated. And then it came to the ending where instead of having what I predicted it to be, of him, I fully predicted there was going to be some kind of bullshit, because early on at the very beginning of the film, it has the president character decrying Los Angeles as the city of sin and as the modern Gomorrah and all these things. And him being this righteous religious man is predicting that God will strike it down. And then lo and behold, not long after that, it is in fact hit by such a significant earthquake that it turns the city into an island. And so he gets elected as a result of it. I was fully expecting that some aspect of this doomsday device thing was going to reveal the fact that it could cause earthquakes, and that this was just him having done this thing of having deliberately created this earthquake with whatever technology he had found for this to get himself elected and installed as the permanent president. I thought there was going to be some shit where that gets revealed, and then Kurt Russell does his thing at the end, it gets revealed to the American people, he gets ousted, and we go back to the way things were. The fact that this movie had the brass fucking stones to come in here and take this whole situation of how so many movies would have set it up, literally laying bare this whole us versus them thing of, oh, I can either use this device to, destroy the people who are trying to invade this new America, or I can use it to destroy the new America myself. He instead decides, no, this whole world is fucked. I will send it back a half a millennia. And it straight up just picks the anarchist route of, no, we can't just be okay with this. The world can't go back the way it was. Sometimes it just has to fucking change. Ironically, being kind of biblical, like almost like Noah's flood level shit. And it's just like, I was sitting there agape, just thinking, did this movie just surprise me? And I kept thinking back on it throughout the entire movie and how many moments it could have done deeper tropes. It could have had him falling for the Utopia character, or could have had the like Cuervo as a character be like an actual true good guy that they then team up with, or all these different random moments that it felt like it could have gone in the direction it inevitably should have, and that it didn't, and that it's been surprising me the whole time. I was oddly like delighted at the end of this movie. I couldn't dislike it as a result of, yeah, they just said fuck it. Fuck it, it's gone to 11, we may as well bring it to 20. And they did it. They like I didn't know what the fuck to say.
Yeah.
So shocked.
And this is just a running theory because John Carpenter does like to play himself, makes it seem like he's putting on a front, but he likes to, discuss social issues and look at the realistic side of things. But yeah. I think some of that ending for LA might have been Kurt Russell's direct influence in writing the script, because he actually assisted in writing for LA. And I think some of those choices came more from his mind, because it does not necessarily feel like a Carpenter decision, which seems weird to say, but just given his movies, he doesn't like to end on definitive notes necessarily. He likes to keep things open. I think of like The Thing
Yeah.
and
Even
well, I guess
Halloween.
from New York and Halloween, yeah, which eventually led into Halloween 2 for a
Yeah.
continuation. So I again that's just like a guess, but I have to wonder if some of that wasn't Russell's doing in assisting with the script writing.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. He definitely seems like he has more of that, you know, kind of devil may care attitude kind of going into it. And he also helped produce the movie as well.
Mm.
Um, like he was one of the producers apparently. And so I don't know why, for whatever reason, it just struck a chord with me for whatever particular reasoning. I like that they decided to, you know what, take a stand on the situation of, yeah, they could have gone this any number of stereotypical routes. Either of these movies could have. And God knows Escape from LA could have, because yeah, those tropes were established by that point. It was tropes established by the original in many cases. And it ends up being a parody kind of itself, but is still able to withhold itself as its own unique picture. And it's so damn frustrating because it is also extremely stupid. There are so many moments where I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And I could never in my life consider it to be a good moment. Meanwhile, Escape from New York is never trying to do anything that's like above and beyond. It very much feels like the 80s, that just general feeling of the world's fucked, what are you going to do about it? And a lot of movies have done that in different degrees. Like RoboCop did that in a lot of ways. Like Running Man and all these sorts of things. Like they're obviously to different levels of ridiculous, but they all kind of had that general feeling of, yeah, this is an action movie on the surface, but underneath it is a pretty distinct feeling of we're in this world that already feels tired, and so it's hard to really make a difference. And with that, it just has a very consistent tone going throughout it. That being Escape from New York, and I enjoyed every second of it. I truly like. I thought the character was annoying, and I didn't really like it. But there were very few moments where I wanted to skip ahead. That I wanted to watch this from beginning to end normally. And so it feels like a strong, solid film, but then compare that to the insane ups and downs that is Escape from LA. I don't know where the fuck to rank him.
I'll say for ragging on the Pliskin character, which I think carries through for me for both movies because he's pretty much the same, and he doesn't necessarily have any growth. Not that he has to, but so I feel the same about him in both movies. But for Escape from New York, I think if it was not for that, just that surrounding cast, everyone feels like they're pulling their weight, and I adore it. For the screen time that he actually gets, I love Donald Pleasance and everything I've seen him in. So him as the president is a fantastic turn, especially, at the end of the movie being so, carefree about the whole situation. I've got more important things to do. I got to give this speech. It was fantastic. And I don't know about you, but me being such a big animation guy, this was jammed packed with people that did voices in, like big time voices in cartoons that I just couldn't get around it because they just sound like their cartoon counterpart. Like Adrienne Barbeau did, Catwoman in the Batman animated series from the 90s and did Catwoman a lot of times since then. Fucking Isaac Hayes was, I think nowadays is probably best known for being Chef on South Park for like 8 seasons or something. And
I forgot about that.
Of course, Ernest Borgnine, once he gets to his heights, it's just Mermaid Man. You can just hear Mermaid Man from SpongeBob. So I don't know. I love all of these. I love all of these actors. I think they're all great. I think Ernest Borgnine's performance is probably my favorite in the movie, just because he's able to keep up this. He's funny, but he's not necessarily a comic relief character. It really is like he's just making the best of a bad situation. Like, oh, I know everything. I take people from here to there. Oh, Brain, isn't it great? We've got Snake here.
None of the characters in Escape from New York feel like a trope. I don't think there's a single one that I could say, oh, this is a trope character for whatever thing. No, they each felt like their own genuine character. Especially with Cabby of it being, in the end, like, him being, like, tragically killed. Like, in the end, like, Snake's character basically memorializing him by having the president play his tape. It's like, there's genuine respect there. It's really sweet. It's like, holy shit. I cannot say the same for Escape from LA. Like, I feel like Steve Buscemi's character alone takes up, like, 5 trope credits. Like, I could not, like, I know that general trope character is bashed on a lot, but by God in heaven, if there is one, I will continue to bash it until the end of days, because I don't know whether it was Rob Schneider that caused it, or Rob Schneider just kind of became like the apotheosis of that type of character, that being sort of sniveling, sideline, kind of shyster character or whatever the fuck, which that might be an offensive term. But you know what I mean.
I mean, I do.
But of this just like sniveling douchebag who's just kind of along for the ride, just like trying to be in it for himself, and who ends up sort of helping the main character, who we're all forced to deal with as a result. It's like, I don't. Nothing in me wanted a character to die more than this character in this movie, and he doesn't. He doesn't. He just fucks off.
Which
it's like, that's not good enough. I wanted him to jump out of the helicopter and get hit by that rocket square dead on. I wanted to see him get blown up, and the fact that he didn't, I was like, God damn it.
Can we just talk about the fact that it's like a long-running joke that Steve Buscemi dies in every single film that he's in, and I've sort of been keeping a running list of the ones where he doesn't, because it's in such a trope. I'm like, well, obviously the two Monsters, Inc. films, he can't die, so he doesn't die in those. He doesn't die in Creepshow, and apparently he doesn't die in this. So that's four movies right there where Steve Buscemi makes it to the end.
Yeah. And like, I think he's a good actor. I'm not trying to bash him or anything. It's just this particular character, I was like, I could not stand it.
Well, and like you were saying, I don't think that Rob Schneider necessarily invented that sort of trope, but he definitely personified it and carried it through to a lot of other actors doing roles similar to this. And to that point, Rob Schneider played a character almost exactly like this in Judge Dredd, which came out a year before this movie.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? Why? How do we have two of these? What's going on?
Now there's two of them. I don't really necessarily have anywhere else to go with these. In terms of ranking, I actually, for as stupid as Escape from LA is, I do not dislike it. I actually do really, I think it's a lot of dumb fun, and it makes a lot of really bold choices that I sort of respect. In terms of like watchability and being a good film, I pick Escape from New York hands down. But I do not dislike Escape from LA, and honestly, because of the big swings it takes, and that ending like you were talking about, I would only rate it like a little bit lower than New York. I don't hate it. It's just very different. For as many similarities as it has with like dialogue choices
which
and acting styles, but
which by the end it feels like it's almost doing deliberately. There's even the moment where the one like police captain guy is like, "Oh, you were trying to pull the same switch as last time, huh?" But then they like take advantage of that. It's like, "Oh, he still did. He just did it differently, and it had a different result." But yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you. Escape from New York is the higher quality film in general. It does better with what it has. Had a pretty low budget, but comparatively. And I think it only did better for it. It's just all the tropiness, like with the technology and everything, they had to just shove in there for Escape from LA was just unnecessary.
Yeah, and I want to say to that end too, just I get it's hard to judge things from the time because technology grows and everything, but a lot of CGI stuff from that era just is not good, and some of it has to do with budget. But I want to bring up Roland Emmerich's Independence Day came out the same year as Escape from LA, and it looks wildly better. Granted, it's not insane. All CGI. A lot of it is models, but even the CGI that they do use does look better than Escape from LA's. So I'll just put that out there.
Yeah, I think the CG was used even-handedly with the models, which is how CG is supposed to do. It's supposed to fill in the cracks, not just hold the whole thing up.
Yeah, you're that James Cameron.
Yeah, exactly. But like you said, it's hard for me not to at least respect Escape from LA in a lot of ways, because there's also a lot of moments where it's haunting looking at that movie and then looking at like headlines from like recently. Everything from like Islamophobia, religious intolerance, to like Christian fundamentalism and really high levels of office, like kids holding guns in a couple scenes, trans people in general. There's a lot of moments where I was like, this is hauntingly close to the bone. And it's from 97. Like, it was rough. It was rough to really think about. And the more and more I thought about certain moments, I was like, this is scary how much this just is like a lot of moments that you could just see in real life nowadays, especially in America. And it just kind of, it hit harder than I expected it to. And so it's difficult for me not to like want to praise. It's difficult to not praise this movie because it does enough right and enough bold choices, like you said, that it's deserving of at least a watch, but it's just not a super quality movie at the end of the day. It's deserving of praise. It's not deserving of like that much praise.
Yeah.
Escape from New York absolutely is. It did a really good job for just like cementing the, that very much the 80s style of dystopia, and just like it did everything it needed to. It didn't feel the need to flesh out its world too much, which is the problem with the Escape from LA. It felt the need to kind of keep expanding a bit too much to the point where it just got silly. And that's the good point about dystopias. Unless you do it really, really well, you don't need that much fleshing out. It's like, yeah, here's a bad situation that's criticizing the president. Go nuts.
The world is just a nightmare zone, and you can do great things with that. You know what, I sort of go back on. I was about to say, I think that the Mad Max series does that really well, but I was like, no, it's really only the first Mad Max that does it well, and I really like Fury Road, but they go in the opposite direction of trying to, flesh out as much as they can, just not explaining it necessarily, which is a different type of good, I think.
Yes. Yeah, this movie kind of like, between, Escape from New York and Escape from LA, it's kind of the Rambo First Blood to Rambo 2 problem, where it's like, the first one had like a really deep kind of story going on, the other just kind of fell for its own bullshit.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah. There's a fair number of, like, movies in general that follow that trend that I don't know that I think about it, where, original 80s are, like, now, like, stereotyped action movie that actually had a fair amount of depth, then kind of has a sequel or a parody or something built off of it that's way, 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 way worse, and is just picking up on all the things people made tropes about. The modern equivalent would be Hunger Games 2 Divergence, for those who would like to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a spicy one, honestly.
Oh, those movies just kind of died, didn't they? No more Maze Runners coming out, or...
Man, Divergence especially killed it dead. Like, there's a trend where you can actually follow it, where Hunger Games, for as much shit as I've given it in the past, I've come to realize, there's a lot of really actually pretty decent commentary about, like, the media world and that sort of thing. And then Divergence really just came along and it just took all the things we kind of make fun of about young adult fiction from, like, the early to mid, like, from the early 2000s to, like, the 20-teens. And then just made shit movies and books about that. And then everyone was like, oh, this sucks. And it sucked so hard they stopped doing stories about that. So that was it.
Oh, you could see the curve.
You really could. God bless Maze Runner for doing what it was trying to do, but nah. It was doomed.
Nah, we ain't about that.
I've tangented pretty hard from this, I apologize.
That's alright. I think we've said what we can on this particular topic, so I might as well go into the social side of the house.
Go right ahead.
So go ahead and send us an email, theyremadeit@gmail.com. Go ahead and send us any suggestions that you might have for future episodes, or just, thoughts on the podcast, goods or bads, that we may do. Also, because the podcast exists, I kind of did things out of order this time. It's been like a month and a half since we last recorded, but go ahead and follow us on any of your favorite podcasting platforms, like Apple Play, Google Play, Speaker, Podbay, Podomatic, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube. We're on all of those, but we are hosted on Anchor. You can also listen to us on there.
Thank you, Anchor. It's weird coming back to this after so long.
Yes. Getting back into the groove. Oh.
Yeah.
And to that groove, you can head on over to They Remade on Twitter and go ahead and follow us there. You can get updates to when new episodes are going live, potential future episodes that we may think about covering. Little promo arts and posters for different movies, shows, games, books, whatever that the two of us have been talking about on recent episodes, and full circle diagrams that I put together documenting people that we have covered on the podcast more than once. And that is it for socials.
I'm realizing, thinking over it, we're getting more and more of, like, the kind of, like, troped on 80s movies kind of under our belts. And not even necessarily 80s exclusively, but, like, between Total Recall, RoboCop, and now this. We're just kind of slowly working down the line of a lot of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for myself, too, because something I surprisingly didn't mention at all in the episode. I similar to Miracle on 34th Street, I did know more or less what the movie was and what it was about, but I had never seen them. I had never seen either of these, so...
Yeah, and I fully thought it was a different genre entirely, so... Oh man, but I'm liking it. I think this is a damn good start to the situation. To the situation being this year. Oh my
glad.
God, this season, whatever. I've just ruined it.
I'm glad I could hold up my end of the bargain based on what I promised at the end of your podcast last year. I was like, we will be covering something that is not Space Jam. So,
hey, fuck.
Better start.
Oh man, I think that's about done it for me though. I'm about to overstay my welcome.
I feel the same way.
As always, I am your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you through the rest of the year, folks.
Bye-bye.
Oh, what are you doing back there, Snake?
Looking for somebody.
Well, why didn't you ask me? Hell, I know everybody in this town. Yes, sir, I've been driving this cab for 30 years. This very same cab.
I'm gonna ask you. Now, where's the president?
The Duke got him. Everybody knows the Duke's got him. Well, you don't have to put a gun to my head, I'll tell you.
Who's the Duke?
The Duke? The Duke of New York, eh? #1. The big man, that's who.
That's real good.